Alright, Shalom. First, I'd like to start by saying all praise to Yahweh, by Shem Shai, by Shem Karkadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles that were well, and salutations to the brothers that's doing the truth and sincerity. Now, this just is just a current event update. This is on a young black man being killed by the police, which this happened last year around this time. But, you know, they, I guess, finally made the decision not to convict the officers. So, but yeah, this has been happening a whole lot over these last couple of years since the whole Trayvon Martin situation. And, you know, Jake and them, all they doing is protesting. And when I play this clip, there's going to be a gentleman that's got dreads, and you know he's taking the more so slight extremist route. You know, just jaking them to defend themselves against the police and stuff of that nature and whatnot. But if Jake and them knew who they were, you know, they wouldn't have to worry about being gunned down in the streets. You know, and Esau just used these events to help fuel race riots. You know, but Jake and them not gonna rise up or fight back until the Lord gives the order. You know, that's for you know, people who wondering, because you know you got a lot of Jakes who be wondering, like, you know, why ain't nobody doing nothing, and you know, stuff like that. The Lord got to has to sanction that. So I'm gonna start with Genesis 49 verse 9. This is Genesis chapter 49, verse 9. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down, he couched as a lion, and as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? Right, the prey is talking about these Edomite devils, these white people. That's Jake and them enemy, you know. And Jake and them, you know, are aware. Well, a lot of them are aware. But some of them not aware that these white people are their enemies. And, you know, that's why all you get is protests or Jake and them trying to hold hands and be peaceful and all this forgiveness, this Christian doctrine forgiveness BS. It says, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down. He couched as a lion. Right, Jake is stooped down. You know, they don't know who they are according to the Bible, man. As an old lion, who shall rouse him up? Right, Yahweh Shem Shai gonna have to rouse Jake up. Gonna have to rouse Judah up, you know, to get into action, you know. But that's one of the reasons why these police officers are getting off, you know, to help further their hatred until them race riots kick off. And that's when the Lord gonna put that spirit out there. You know, Jake and them just can't rise up and just start fighting against the police and all that extra shit. And for those who, you know, well, we know through the spirit of power, Yahweh Shem Shai, and being taught by our elders that we not to get involved with that type of shit, you know, because ultimately all they doing is fighting against the Lord, because the Lord set this white man up to be, you know, in power. So this is Romans chapter 13, verse 1. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of the Most High. The powers that be are ordained of the Most High. Right, so Esau is in power because he was ordained by the Lord. So, you know, you can't just go out there and rise up and try to take this devil down, man. You know. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power to fight against, like the Black Panthers, or having a Black Panther, you know, to fight against them, Slakia. Resisteth the ordinances of the Most High, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. Right, and we got a couple of examples of that in the scriptures of people trying to rise, Israelites trying to rise up against the Roman Empire. If you try to rise up against the powers that the Lord set up, then the Lord gonna have it to where they overcome you and destroy you, because there's a set time, for when Yahweh Shai, Yahweh Shai gonna put the spirit on his men to do, his will, to take down this devil, But Jake them, they carnal, so they don't really understand that. And in church, they don't even break that scripture down right. This is Isaiah. This Isaiah chapter 13. This is one of my favorite scriptures. Isaiah chapter 13, verse 14. It says, "And it shall be as a chased roe, and as a sheep that no man taketh up. They shall every man turn to his own people." Right, and that chased roe is talking about how Jacob them going to be chasing these Edomites, these white people, up and down these streets. "And as a sheep that no man taketh up, they shall every man turn to his own people, and flee everyone into his own land." Right, and that's been happening. The air has been shut down, their stores fleeing into their own land. "Their children, everyone that is found shall be thrust through, and everyone that is joined unto them shall fall by the sword." Right, so when these race riots kick off between Israel and these devils and these other nations, well, ultimately these devils, just to speak on them, these Edomites, if an Israelite get found holding their hands, then they're gonna be put to death with them. Because the Lord bringing the nations back to their own people. It says, "Their children also shall be dashed to pieces before their eyes. Their houses shall be spoiled, and their wives ravished." Right, so you're going to be having people kill your kids, run in your house and take all your goods and stuff, and rape your women. That's what's going to happen when all this chaos and stuff kick off. So that lady right there that's crying in this right there, it's going to be way worse. Them cries going to be way worse than how she looking now. Why? Because they didn't want to accept the scriptures. They didn't want to accept that Yahweh Shai is Yahweh is the Most High God, which He has a name, and He's a black man, and they don't want to accept Yahweh Shai. They prefer Jesus. That's why Israel going through a lot of shit that they going through now today, or a lot of stuff that they going through now today, because they don't have any knowledge of the truth. That's why the Lord got a controversy with this land, man, because there's no truth, like He said. But this is Hosea chapter 4, verse 6. "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because thou hast rejected knowledge. I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me, seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy power. I will also forget thy children." Right, man. So the Lord, not dealing with 2/3 of Israel because they don't want to know Him. So 2/3 of Israel going to be cut off, from the mothers to the fathers to the children. All right, so now I'm going to play this clip.
U.S. prosecutors at Sacramento County District will not change 2 police officers who shot dead an unarmed black man in California last March.
We must recognize that they are often forced to make split-second decisions. We must also recognize that they are under tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving circumstances. And as a result...
And Jacob be wicked, man. That's why the Lord be killing them. But they be getting, really it's a mercy kill. Because what's coming is way worse than how he died. So, he kind of blessed, man. for being in that situation.
So we will not charge these officers with any criminal liability related to the shooting death and the use of force on Stephon Clark.
Well, Schubert added that the U.S. Attorney's Office acknowledges the tragic nature of the incident, as well as the public anger and disappointment over the decision. She, however, insisted that the officers did not break any laws in the conduct of their duty. Sacramento police said 22-year-old Stephon Clark was shot after he approached the officers holding an object in his hand. But later they only found his cell phone besides his body. Well, the incident stirred widespread condemnation and protest. Angry protesters called the killing a murder, as video footage showed the officers shooting the victim 20 times. We're going to cross over to Washington, D.C., joined by Colin Cowell, Press TV's correspondent. And also, we'll be welcoming from Tampa, Florida, Life Malcolm, Director of Black People's Advancement.
Now, let me see. I don't know if they put the clip. I seen the clip, the video of the young man. I guess he ran. You know, Jake gonna be putting himself in them situations, but how it ended was he was at the other side of a table, and the police start firing on him. You know, they said gun, and then they looked, but you know, Jake didn't shoot at him or nothing. Then they said, and then the other police officer said gun, gun, gun. And then they just opened fire on him. It didn't even look like he had a gun. He looked kind of suspicious, but he was at the other side of a table. It didn't look like he walked up on him or nothing. But, you know, it's still a judgment about Shemar Shai, because Jake didn't be wicked. So.
And defense organizations. Starting off with Colin, good to see you. Now, Colin, fill us in on the latest of this case and what we've heard the prosecutors basically state.
Yeah, good to see you too, Mars. Yeah, we've got a lot of outrage happening in California and other parts of the country after yet another unarmed black man has been killed by police. Now, this happened about a year ago. Police say that they received a call about somebody committing some type of vandalism and breaking into windows and going into someone's yard. And when they approached Clark, they say that he took somewhat of a position or a stance that looked like he was about to shoot at them. Regardless, the thing is that Clark never had a weapon. They only found a cell phone. And again, we've heard these stories before. One of the first news stories that I reported on back in 1999 was the shooting death of Amadou Diallo in New York. And he was shot at about 41 times, hit with about 19 bullets. So this is something that has happened throughout the years. This is not a new phenomenon. It's not a new occurrence. And we have some people who are very upset and frustrated because of the fact that the police department, who is supposed to be there to serve and protect them, has now actually killed somebody who was not actually armed, who did not commit any murder or anything like that, and the loss of a life. And this is someone who was in a relationship with someone who had a family. So now you have a person who is now dead, who has left this earth, and it leaves a hole in another black family in California.
Well, Colin, you said it leaves a hole in another black family. There are a lot of holes that's been left by these black families, to these black families in general. When we look at, as you said, you were reporting on this in the 90s, and of course, even before that, we've been seeing these incidents take place. I'm just wondering, from an organizational perspective, the type of organizations that have sprung up, perhaps because of what many would say is the lack of justice for black Americans, in order to try to put pressure on the judicial system or in general with law enforcement. Can you tell me about that side of things, or are there any type of movements working towards that goal?
Yeah, so of course we know about Black Lives Matter. That's probably the most prominent organization that works to find some type of justice for victims of police shootings. There are smaller organizations that also pop up that are usually in municipalities. But I would say that the preeminent organization would be Black Lives Matter. We've also received some feedback from politicians. Of course, we do know that next year is an election year, but Kamala Harris is someone who stepped up and has reacted to the shooting. Of course, a former DA in that state, also someone who was a prosecutor and who actually helped to put a lot of people of color, particularly black men, behind bars. Some people say that it was warranted because of the crimes. Other people say no, it wasn't. That there should have been more judicious process that was rendered before incarcerating some of these black people. So organizationally, you have politicians who are talking about it, and then from the grassroots, you do have groups like Black Lives Matter.
All right, let me cross over to Tampa and get life in on this discussion. And we've talked about this before, unfortunately, way too often. I guess the question I want to ask you is, how do we change this reality? What needs to be done in your perspective?
Well, Marzier, first of all, I have to say it's so good to hear your voice.
Thank you.
And I'm glad to be back on Press TV again. Thank you for the invitation. In my view, there's no law that is going to protect African people. I was looking at Schubert's website.
And that's another reason why Jake need to be killed, because they believe we're Africans. And they prefer to be Africans. And, a lot of this shit in this news be set up, to push out them vibrations. But throughout his whole little speech, he gonna keep calling Jake Africans.
It claims that the DA office is part of the DA office's job is to protect communities. Clearly, it's not to protect communities that Mr. Stephon Clark was from, people like Stephon Clark. So, in my view, what needs to happen is African people need to be mindful that the law refuses to protect us, and that we must protect ourselves. If you asking practically, how do we do that? I would say the African people need to start riding in groups of 2 or more, walking in groups of 2 or more. If African people have not had their right to...
I know that they, if I'm not mistaken, they have laws against Jake and being in, certain amount of groups of walking too deep. I forgot what it's called, because they automatically assume that it's gang related or something like that.
Arm themselves taken away from them because of some so-called crime or felony. African people need to be prudent enough to get a gun, get a concealed weapons permit if it's allowed in their state.
Well, let me just interrupt you right there. Because this individual we're talking about in California was shot 20 times by law enforcement officials. And that's carrying a cell phone. So you're saying that, of course, black people have the right, like others, to carry guns. When they're not carrying guns, they're getting shot like this. I want to talk about that side, because there seems to be different treatment in general with the law and even the right to carry arms, the right to bear arms for black Americans.
So, and I appreciate that intervention. So I own a lot of guns, and over the course of time, I've owned a lot of cell phones, from the big Nokia cell phones to the flip phones to the Blackberries to the smartphones. I've never gotten my guns confused with a phone. And despite Schubert's refrain that these cops often have to make these split-second decisions, and you have to understand they have to, they're in tense situations. The reality is, oftentimes, these cops create these tense situations, these so-called tense situations, create the circumstances under which they have to make these so-called split decisions. I'm saying that what is clear is that there's a war going on, and we're always going to be on the losing side of, African people are always going to be on the losing side of the war if all we have is a cell phone, and the people that are at war with us have guns. Okay. And so I'm not.
And yeah, he's right. There is war going on. Israel versus these Edomites, man. The two main characters in this movie.
Saying anything other than it would be intelligent for black people to move it, to do the same thing that the police do. Move in groups, move with arms, and act like you think the police have a gun when they pull you over. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'd love to talk to you another time about all of this. Appreciate you being with us. Life Malcolm out of Tampa and Colin Campbell out of D.C.
Thank you.
Well, stay with us, viewers, as we continue our look at the news.
All right, and I want to say all praise to Yahweh Shai, Bashim Kakadash, double honors to the elders and apostles that rule well, and salutations to the brothers that's doing the truth and sincerity. Shalom.